Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Dating After Divorce podcast. I'm your host, Shadi Curry. Today, I have a very special guest. And I know I say special guest every time, but I have a special guest today. So I'm going to introduce you to Christal Allen-Harrahill. She's a mom, wife, certified life and marriage coach. She helps professional women who want to stop having the same fight with their partner and create better communication in their marriage. And before I let Christal tell you a little bit about herself, I'm going to say Christal is our marriage coach. So she is coaching Kent and myself,
It's such an
uh,
honor.
which is fun. I asked myself, do I want to ask her to tell the listeners what she thinks of us or not? Like, which way
Well,
would that go?
well, it's so funny because I didn't know if you would bring that up or not. I was fine either way, but I mean, it's kind of like how you just said. I say all of my episodes are special, and I say like I love my clients, but seriously, you and your husband are very special, and I really mean that. You
Thank
two
you.
have something between the two of you that it's a beautiful bond, and I love the work that the two of you are doing, and that's from the bottom of my heart. It's a pleasure when we get on that Zoom call, the three of us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
And really, I mean, I just still feel like it was so serendipitous and miraculous how
it
we
was.
connected.
Yeah,
And so for listeners, it was less like it was like a drive-by. It was like a fly-by-night connection
it really was.
at the Life Coach School conference.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what really caught my eye was you said you were a marriage communication coach.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, that's interesting. But then there was also something about you. You were so calm, which I am not calm. I have no calmness at all. And then we weren't able to get together again, even though we
Yeah.
tried. But I was just like, I came home, I texted my husband from the conference. I said, I found us a coach. Like I said, I only talked to
Wow.
her for like 5 minutes, but I think she's
Literally.
our person.
Oh, wow. I love that. See, I didn't even know that little piece of the story, but you're right. We didn't really spend a ton of time together. We connected and swapped info. And then after the conference, I was so happy that you and Kent, had a consult and we decided to work together. And yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, so good. But we're not here to talk about us today. We're going to talk about you and your story. So
Okay.
first of all, just introduce yourself to the listeners. Tell them
Yeah.
who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so as Sade mentioned, I'm a life and marriage coach, and I love helping. I used to predominantly work with women, but it's so interesting. More and more women are saying, can my husband come? Or my husband is willing to do this work. And so I really have been having the honor of working with couples as of lately, which I truly am really, really enjoying. But aside from that, I'm a mom and I'm a wife. This is my second marriage. I know we're going to get more into that. So this December will be 9 years for my husband and I. And then I have a little one. And yeah, I know we'll talk about more, but those are the basics.
Yeah, amazing. Well, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast. I feel like
Thank
the
you.
listeners are in for a real treat. So, I
Yes.
mean, we can just dive right in. Just
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about, your first marriage and the divorce,
Sure.
kind of like what led up to that, and then we'll go right into the good stuff, the dating stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely. My first marriage was like a Kardashian style marriage. And I think I actually beat her by 12 days. It was a 60-day marriage.
Wow.
And it's so interesting because some of my really good girlfriends who I've kind of either grown up with or just met early in my professional life and who were either a part of the wedding that first time or attended the wedding, they still will sometimes giggle at me and the decision that I made because like nobody could believe it. And really
Mm.
what it was, Sade, was me being what I consider relatively young. I was late 20s. And keep in mind, I think I like using the word young for me because when I was growing up, like I wasn't one of those little girls who dreamt about getting married and having kids. Like that never was on my radar. And so I think if I would have maybe listened to that that part of me that felt kind of strongly about that, I would have waited until later in life to
Mhm.
get for my first marriage. And so, it's so interesting. My first husband, um, the main reason why why I asked for a divorce is because I had no idea that we were on the track for marriage. And I know this may sound so interesting, but when he asked me to marry him, I was not expecting it. And I didn't want to say no, and I didn't want to hurt his feelings. And as we know, those are all the wrong reasons to say yes to a proposal.
Yeah.
And it was a matter of then allowing myself to get caught up in the wedding planning, right? And not taking a step back and saying, like, is this something that you really want to move forward? And I think we had been dating for like 15 months before so it wasn't like some crazy, like we had just met and 2 days later we were married. Like we had been spending time together, but I just wasn't there yet. And I didn't know that he was.
Yeah.
And so, you know, unfortunately and fortunately, it was shortly after we were married that I made the very hard decision to just say, I can't go on with this. Like, this isn't my truth. And as hard as it is, we've moved in together. Like, so literally boxes are still unpacked. And I know how hard this is, but I can't do this. And so right after that, I was single and trust me, there was a lot of things that went on around me
Yeah,
making
I
that
actually, I'd like
decision.
to ask just
Yeah.
because so I mean, that courage is rare. That kind of courage is rare.
Yeah.
Like, I remember the first time it occurred to me that I'd made a mistake with my first marriage was probably less than 6 months into it, about 6 months into it.
Okay.
Then I hung in there for another like 17 years.
Yes. Yeah.
So just so you know. And
Yeah.
I think my situation is a lot more common than yours. I think it
Mm-hmm.
might be useful for the listeners to hear your process to get that, because even dating, sometimes I'm
Mm-hmm.
working with a woman and she knows this is not the guy for her, but just
Mm.
saying no to a man that she's not even married to, that she's only been
Yes.
seeing for 3 weeks, can be so hard.
Yes. And it's so interesting that it can't. And I appreciate you saying that because, I took heat from all angles. Trust me. My in-laws, he had a huge family. And they thought that I was everything but who I was, right? I was accused of being gay. I was accused of cheating. I was accused everything that they could think of because they needed to rationalize my decision in their mind and
Yeah.
make themselves comfortable with my decision. I had, like my good friends, it was in jest, but, teasing from them. I had people like, man, can I still get my wedding gift back from you? And, like all kinds of stuff. Right. But I think as I look back on that, I think I was 28, that 28-year-old version of Christal, like me, it was me being in that. I was sitting on my couch and I was waiting for him to come home because I knew that it took him 40 minutes to come home. And I told myself, you're going to do it tonight and it's going to be hard. And I don't know how he's going to like respond, but just prepare for this to be tough. And I think I was so like secure in the knowing that I couldn't move forward with this. Like everybody was just like, well, it would have been great if you would have had that knowing before, you know what I mean? And I did, but I ignored it. And so, but I just said, okay, I can't allow myself to go on like this or him. It's not fair to him as well. Like, yes, in that time that we were together, yeah, we had like communication issues. We had our little things, right? But the true reason why I asked for that separation was because I knew that this wasn't right for me. And I'll also share with your audience, at that point in my life, I was also very high in my avoidant attachment style. And if you're familiar with attachment styles, the pressure of being in this commitment that I really knew at my core I wasn't in alignment with, it was like a pressure cooker. And the discomfort of asking for the divorce and hearing everybody's opinions and fielding questions and stuff like that, all of that was like nothing in comparison to the pressure that I felt in that relationship that I knew I did not want to be in. And so I want to encourage your ladies who are listening, when you see those red flags, allow yourself the time to just sit and have a conversation with yourself, or if you have a life coach or a therapist or even a good girlfriend. Like, I don't think I was doing enough of that. I really was internalizing things.
Mhm.
And so I encourage you, like, don't just leave that bottled up. And if you know that you need to make a decision about something, know that it may be uncomfortable, but you can make it through that discomfort.
Yes, yes.
Yes,
The discomfort they're just feelings.
that's right.
They're not necessarily reality. It's like
That's
separating
right.
reality from the feelings.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely.
Yeah. So afterwards, after the
Yeah.
divorce, what
Yeah.
was your journey like?
Yeah. Okay. So right after, I definitely knew that I wanted to be single, right? That's what I went through all the trouble for, right? So I
Mhm.
could just be by myself. And that was a 5 year time span where I was single. And so the first 3 years, I was like very much intentionally single, like literally no dating, no nothing. And then the last 2 years, I had started, I felt like I wanted companionship again. And,
Mhm.
it's also interesting because, and I don't know if you or, can relate to this, or I'm sure someone in your listenership, but I was always that person who I didn't know how to date casually. And I always like wanted to fault myself for that, because I would have like girlfriends or like just know of people who,
Mhm.
they would date a couple people and nothing would be too serious and they would just be really enjoying themselves. I'm like, if I knew how to do that, I wouldn't have had to go through that divorce experience before, if I weren't always like jumping in these serious relationships. And
Yeah.
so when I started to intentionally date, and I did that through dating apps. And so I
Mhm.
use like oh my gosh, I don't even know the name. It's like Christian Mingle or something like
Christian
that.
Mingle. Yes.
Yeah.
When it was
Yeah,
still Christian.
yeah, right. Exactly. But it was still Christian. That's
It was
so
Christian at one
funny.
time, for sure.
Exactly. Yes. And that one and another one, I can't remember the name.
There was
And
eHarmony was
there
also a
you
Christian
go. It
app.
was
Yeah.
eHarmony. Okay. So I use those two apps, and I would just, meet people at Starbucks every now and again. And that was just an experience where I was like, this is not what I thought it was going to be. And I actually never met anyone who I even went on like a second or third date. I probably went like over those 2 years, maybe like 10 dates or so. And
Mhm.
it was really just a mismatch of like who I met in person wasn't necessarily who they were online. And
Yeah.
so my friends would tell me, well, you need to do something, because you're not going to just meet somebody, sitting at home in your pajamas. Because I was a homebody and they used to tease me about that. And lo and behold, Sade, I basically met my husband at home in my
In your
pajamas.
pajama. Oh my
And my pajamas.
God.
My husband, we were next door neighbors. We
Amazing.
were next door neighbors. And so, what's funny too is we had been neighbors for 6 years before we discovered each other. Like, we
Mm.
would see each other every now and again, like random stuff, like him walking his dogs or me walking mine, that type of thing, but never had any lengthy conversations with him or anything like that for 6 years. And then one day I came home and there was like a package on my doorstep. And I remember I was working in higher education at the time, and it was at a point where I really was feeling like I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So I wasn't so thrilled about, working that position any longer. It had been a rough day. And I remember coming home and seeing that package. And that's kind of like where our journey started. He had sent me, it was like a fruit and nut, like gift
Yeah.
package. And it had a little note on there saying it was from my neighbor Jim, and he gave his house number. And I'm just like, that house number sounds familiar. So I like walk out to the street and I'm like, oh, that's the house right there. And I'm trying to think, did he put his number on there, or was that a separate note? I can't quite remember, but I remember walking over and thanking him, and he opened the
Mhm.
door, and that was like our first interaction with one another. And then from there we would like walk dogs,
Mhm.
and just kind of got to know each other. And then in 2014 is when we married. So it was June of 2013 when we met, and then
Yeah.
December of 2014 when we married.
So about 18 months. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. Your
Yeah.
story underscores one of the things I always tell my clients. I'm like, chances are the person you're going to partner with is already in your orbit.
They are.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, Kent and I found out that we had a mutual friend. I had been in Toastmasters for about 3 years in the, 04, 05. And he had gone to high school with one of the people that I interacted with a lot. We went to the same club, we worked together, we worked events together. And it turns out that he had gone to high school with this person.
Oh my
And
goodness.
because we're like 6 degrees away from, most people on the planet, chances are your partner is just 1 or 2 degrees away from you.
Yes, that is so true. I love that. And I totally believe in that. And I also want to extend that reminder to your ladies to don't try to be something that you're not. Like, remember when I was trying to, make myself be this dater and do all this stuff and just be who you are, because when you meet someone, you want them to really get to know you for you. And so if you're, how they say, if you're sending your representative on those dates and you're not truly being who you are, and then you decide to truly commit to each other, maybe before marriage, and then the real you comes out, that's kind of when some of the friction comes along. So if you have, like the ladies who are listening, you've been through a divorce, you've had the courage to go through that, you've probably may have been through custody battles and who knows and all that stuff and separating assets, all the other stuff. You have, went through that experience. Like, you owe it to yourself in this dating period to what many of them are probably would label as being selfish, but I say it's not. Right? Tell me, is that how you tell ladies?
We hear that a lot. Like, oh, it's selfish. I don't want to lead him on. I don't want to hurt his feelings. I don't want to be mean. What are people going to say? My mom is going to, that's a lot of what we coach on, are these pressures that come on women to basically be something that they're not.
Yes. Yeah, it's really tough. And I think it's important. And that's why I love the platform that you've created here, because it's so important for women to hear that it's very normal for them to feel pressured and to have feel pressured by themselves, societal pressures, family, friends, just like you're saying you experience with your clients. But, at the end of the day, you are the one who are living in your life every single day, and you are the one that are living with your decisions, right? And so I just say, remember that. And when you're making a decision, it's funny, I'm reading a book right now. It's called Be Your Future Self Now. I think the author is Benjamin Hardy. And I think that could be interesting to think about when you are dating. It's like, make these decisions for your future self. Right? Think about her, like maybe your future self does just want to like go out with your girlfriends and date like multiple people right now. And then you'll get to a phase or a season in your dating life where you're like, okay, I kind of do want to be monogamous or just commit to one person. And what are the values that are in alignment for me that I'm looking for? And, that also makes me think of one other thing. I think about the difference. There are many differences, right? But one of the main differences between my first marriage and the marriage that I'm in right now is it's also mindset, because I think about some of like the struggles that my husband and I currently, how that we've been through over like the 9 years. They weren't necessarily any less than some of the struggles that I went through with my first husband, but my mindset around them was different, right? I had really been intentional about making the decision to be in this relationship in a different way, right? Like when I said yes to him, I actually meant it, number one.
Yeah.
That was the biggest thing, right? That was the big difference for sure. But yeah, it really is a mindset of like staying committed to it, because it truly is work, as we know. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know if you know how radical your your approach is. I teach something called, core values dating, which is for the woman to just truly know herself, like really, really know yourself, really, really know what you want, but not just really knowing what you want and having a strong personal identity, but then also centering yourself in the choices that you make in the relationship.
Oh, I love that.
Which
Centering yourself.
Radical.
Yes.
And you almost effortlessly modeled So I'm
Yeah.
like, have you always been that, clear about who you are? I mean, I know there was a period where you let yourself be pressured into the first
Yeah.
night, but,
Yeah.
but have you always been this clear about who you are and what you want and what feels right to you? Or did you learn
Yeah.
that along the way?
I appreciate that question. And it's so funny, how it makes me think about talking to someone about an area that is really like, for lack of better words, like feels easy for them and it may feel like harder for other people. Um, I I have always been like this, like in relationships before my first marriage, when I would date, yes, I would always get into like these long-term relationships, but like when they were over, it was like over. And I
Mm.
wonder too if it may also have something to do with like me mentioning earlier how I didn't really think about or even fantasize about marriage and family,
Yeah.
as like a little girl. And I think also and I don't mean to generalize because this isn't my experience, but maybe also women who grew up with their dad in their life, they
Mhm.
may have maybe their relationship around this type of thing is different. I didn't
Mhm.
have that. And so I felt like I felt like super independent around the conversation and experience of dating. And so, yeah, when I would make a decision, it would come with a lot of like thought and effort. But then when I made it, it was like, this is just it, right?
Yeah.
And look, in the past, I'm sure some of those decisions like may not have been like the wisest move, but for me, it was. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Oh,
To
100%.
right, like to know, as I look back, yeah, there were some definitely things that I could have done differently, but for me in that moment, I was just doing the best that I knew how and
Mhm.
was willing to deal with like the quote unquote backlash from that person or from a friend group or something like that because I'm living my life and dealing with the
Yeah.
consequences. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and we're all going to make mistakes. That's the thing. No one is getting out of
Yeah.
this, dent free.
Unscathed, right,
We're all
exactly,
going to make
yes.
mistakes. And in
Yeah,
fact, I think what harms women the most is the fear
yeah,
of making that mistake, which causes them to then center
yes,
all the requirements and the narrative and what people expect and what people want and what other people want.
yeah,
For most women, that's centered. And they're
yeah,
like on the periphery of their life trying to make this other set of things happen.
yeah. That's such a good description of that, and I love that that's how you teach your clients because allowing them to, like, fall in complete love with themselves and really know what they want, like, that allows them to step into their next relationship if that's what they want,
Yeah.
in such a secure way, so different than how we all did it the first time around, right?
100%.
Right, yes.
100%.
Yeah.
Right. So I have a question about, and I don't know if your husband has ever told you,
Mhm.
okay, so that's a big deal. And I don't know if did he send packages to all the other neighbors or was he like making his move right here? And what gave him the confidence that like you weren't gonna call the police that he was
Right.
stalking you?
Right, exactly. Like, here's this weird guy. We have talked about it, and I said, "Well, how did you like notice me?" And so he answered similarly to how I just shared, like, "Well, okay, over the 6 years, of course, I had like noticed you at some point." And he said, "And then one day, I remember even being out on my balcony, and I saw you in your backyard gardening." And I can't remember what he said he thought at that moment. It escapes me, but it was shortly after that that he sent the package. And so it
Yeah.
really was taking a chance, right? Because I kid you not, like we had never said more than a good morning. And that
Mhm.
wasn't frequent, right? Because we wouldn't always run into each other. I was working out of the home at that point and he was working from home. And so we didn't have like these instinct schedules or anything like that. But it definitely was bold. And but I appreciated how it was such a different approach than I had ever experienced before. It was, like, nice and, like, kinda slow,
Yeah.
and that's what I needed. It was like a nice little on-ramp to dating, after 5 years single, 2 years of trying unsuccessfully,
Mhm.
and then yeah, so it was kinda bold.
And so knowing you, like we've gotten to know you now, if he wasn't
Yeah.
right for you, you would
Yeah.
have just been like, okay, hard no.
You
Right.
know what? If he wasn't, I would have been very clear and just after
Mhm.
like we spent a couple times because those first initial meetings they were dog walks, right? And so
Yeah.
we were talking and like getting, I would just say, I'm really enjoying our time together as friends.
Yeah.
Right. I would have been really clear about whatever it is, but no,
You would
since
have
I
friend zoned him. That's how we say that in the
there
dating
we
world.
go. I would have friend zoned him. Exactly. Yes. But
So
yeah,
why
I get
didn't
it.
you? Like, what was it about him that drew you? I like to talk about like the green flags
Oh,
because
okay.
we're often really good at like, oh my God, this person's toxic and listing all the things
Yeah.
we don't want.
Yeah.
But recognizing what we do want sometimes can be a little bit harder. So tell us, like, why did
Yeah.
you like keep seeing
Yeah.
him?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that question. And I think for me, there were a couple of things. From what I had learned of him when we decided to like actually start dating and like make a commitment to each other, all the things that I had learned about him to that point was that he was very stable. He was a man of his word, which was a really big deal for me. And interestingly enough, this may sound weird, but he was also predictable in some ways that made me feel safe.
Yeah.
And and for example, what I mean by that is, he had a very like kind of rigid schedule, and even to this day, to a certain degree, he kind of still follows somewhat of a rigid schedule. But I love that he had discipline and like he kept commitments to himself, like even around like his health and around his career, that type of thing. And then learning more about like his story, that was a connection point for me. So yeah, I think those were the big things. Like he was a man of his word. He was stable. He had habits that created safety for me
Mhm.
mentally, and yeah, and we just enjoyed each other's company. We liked doing some of the same things, like, hiking, walking the dogs. Like we love going out to dinner, little things like that, and we love to travel. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, like those were the initial. And then I would say, like as we went on, and of course got to know each other a lot more, then you get to also know, like, the bumps in the road a little bit, and then you decide how
Mhm.
you want to work through those. But yeah, I would say those were the initial green lights.
Yeah. Oh my God, that
Yeah.
sounds so nice.
Yeah. Right? I mean, it is beautiful and then sometimes it's not, right? As you
Yeah.
know, as you
Right. And
know.
what I love about your description is just because we often grew up, and I don't know if you did, I grew up on romance novels. And then as a
Mm.
young adult, all the movies, the idea of romance, the fairy tale, like we were all, our generation in particular. And I think
Yeah.
even, I think millennials have some of this too. And I'm
Mhm.
hoping Gen Z will escape the
I agree.
indoctrination
I
about the fairy
agree.
tale, but I'm not sure. I'm not,
Yes.
it's not encouraging.
Yes. I hope they escape it as well.
Like I feel like my daughter is Gen Z and she has friends and they're all
Yeah.
feminists, but then
Yeah.
I'm like, you all are fairy tale feminists. You all need to
Fairy
like
tale. I
we
love
need to
that
like
description.
so
My
but
gosh.
yeah, but that indoctrination and the programming, the conditioning of women to like look for this fairy tale, what
Yeah.
you've described sounds so beautiful and so
Mhm.
desirable, but nothing like the fairy tale.
That's true. That
Oh my God,
actually, I
so
never thought
interesting.
about that before. You're right, because okay, share with me like because I didn't grow up on the romance novel. So like what's being sold to us and yeah,
Yeah.
share.
So the fairy tale is the man is he's big and strong. So he's bigger than
Mhm.
you, he's taller than you, he's got these dark looks. He looks like
Yes.
Superman or some version of, you know, the people we see on TV. So he's got that
Yeah.
when you meet him, he's got that he's an enigma, he's got that
Mm.
magnetism. So of course you
Mhm.
feel the spark on the
Yeah.
first date. And if you don't feel
Yeah.
the spark on the first date,
Then yeah.
something's wrong.
Wow.
Of course he makes more money than you.
Mhm. Mhm.
But he and this is where the ants come in. He makes more money than you, but he's also not a workaholic.
Ah, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
He's handy and can fix everything around the house, but he also plans like the super romantic events and dinners and travel.
Oh my gosh.
It's always these ands, which of
Yes,
course every woman wants some unique combination of a man.
for sure.
And I always encourage my clients to find that, like, what's the unique combination for you? But I
Yeah.
think because of our programming, sometimes we have a hard time figuring out what is it that I really want?
Yes.
And there's a little bit of shame if you don't want the things you've been told you should want.
Yes. I appreciate you saying that because I think, again, that's a reminder to women that it's natural for you to feel that fear to step into finding out what it is that you want, like the women who work with you do. And so, yeah, I think the more you get that message out there, it really does help women just step into that fear. Because like you said earlier, it is only an emotion and it makes
Yeah.
sense. It's good to normalize it. Like, okay, it makes sense that you're feeling that fear. And right, there's the power of the and let's work on finding out what it is that you truly want, even if it doesn't look like that fairy tale that we've been sold.
Yes. Yeah. Because
Yeah.
when you mentioned a rigid schedule, and I like the idea of, like, my husband is fairly predictable
Mm-hmm.
in many ways,
Mm-hmm.
maybe not as predictable as yours, but he's fairly, like, I can pretty
Yeah.
much
Yeah.
predict where he's gonna be, what he's gonna be doing. But the idea of a man who, like, is predictable or keeps to a
Mm-hmm.
schedule, or even a rigid schedule.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. You if a man put that on his apps,
Right?
he would
He
get
would
all the left swipes.
he would get all the left swipes. That is, I mean, his little profile would be like dusty, like for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're so right. That's so interesting.
But there are a lot of women that I know who that's exactly what they want. I have clients right now who that's exactly what they want. And
Mm,
and a lot of my job is really sitting with them and holding space to check and double check, and
yes.
when they start to stray from what we've set up front that they want, really
Yeah.
checking in with them. Because sometimes you do change what you want. You're like, oh, I
Sure.
discovered this and I want it.
There you
And
go.
sometimes it's just the pull of society and the pull of even our evolutionary biology, the brain
Yes.
and the brain farts.
Yes. That, I'm so happy you're saying that because when you're working with a woman and in the beginning she's telling you she wants one thing and then maybe she's going out there and dating and then that changes. I think that's so important to acknowledge because there are some women, like you said, 6 months in, you knew, but then you went a couple 17 more years more. You know what I mean? And so there are those of us out there with that story. And so we haven't been in the dating pool in years. And so it makes sense that when we get out there, yeah, our wants and desires may change because we have been so detached from that anyhow. And so we're learning different things about us it's like, it's a one thing to know like what you want and desire, and then,
Mhm.
but to have interaction with that, right, with another man or a person, right,
Yeah.
is like completely different.
It really is. We have
Mm-hmm.
my clients and I have a lot of conversations about chemistry. Like, what does
Yes.
chemistry mean to you? Not what chemistry looks like on the TV
Y-
screen.
Right.
What does that mean for you? And when you have had chemistry in the past, was it always chemistry?
Yeah.
Or was it just like, was it something else? And we really spend a lot of time teasing. Sometimes people ask me, why does this take 6 to 9 months? I'm like, because we're teasing out. And not
Yes.
every client takes that long. Some of them it's like 3 months, 4 months,
Mm-hmm.
depending on how well they know themselves. But
Right.
teasing out things that you may not have been told you should know about yourself. Like,
Yes.
what do you really want? What nourishes you? I like to use the word nourish versus the word what is attractive to you. Because
Oh,
sometimes
I
what is
like that.
attractive to us isn't nourishing for us.
That is such a truth, Sade. I love that you're teaching your clients that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Because I mean, listen, we all have our celebrity that we're gonna have,
Right.
where everyone has a celebrity. What do they call it? They call it the
It,
card where you have
the the past or
the
something like that.
pass
Yes.
for this
Yeah.
celebrity. We
Yeah.
all
Your
have that. We're
celebrity
all
pass.
human. Everybody's gonna have that, right?
Uh-huh.
But knowing if you can at least say, okay, yes, whenever I see this person, my ovaries jump, versus
Oh my gosh, that's so
who I
funny.
want to live with for the rest of my life may look a lot
Yes.
different than that.
That's so true. You are so right about that because doing life with someone every single day, the
Mhm.
highs and the lows, like that takes a different type of commitment, connection, you know, like chemistry,
Mhm.
like that it just looks different. And I
Yeah.
even heard someone say that if when you meet someone and you saying this made me think of it, like if you feel like this big, like huge explosion, like spark between like quote unquote chemistry between the two of you, that it may not necessarily be a good sign, right?
Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah.
so yeah, you have to like ask yourself those questions and dig deeper and move past like that
Yeah.
initial phase.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think about even in friendships, like, as you were saying
Mm,
that, I think about, because I
yeah.
mean, I'm always like, connecting with people, and there's sometimes
Hmm.
people I'm like, oh, I would love to be friends with this person and things like that.
Yeah.
And I'm learning what it feels like when I meet someone that I can actually have a long-term friendship with.
Yes.
Versus the ladies who really catch my attention, and I feel that not an attraction, but it's almost like I feel that magnetism, and I'm a
Yes.
huge admirer of the work that they do or who they
Yeah.
are and their sparkle or even their depth of insight. And this happened to me recently
Yeah.
where I met someone and she had just had a depth of insight and she was just so sparkly is the word. And I actually
Yeah.
still really, I mean, we're friends and I love her. But
Yeah.
I realized even as I tried to like move closer and
Mm,
like connect our circles, my efforts to connect our circles didn't quite work. So
I
I
hear
was
you.
like, oh,
Mhm.
we can be friends, but
Right.
only in this way. We
Yeah.
can't be friends in the way that I was thinking we could be friends.
Yes, yes. I love that distinction, right? Because it's like sometimes it goes back to what we were saying before. Like sometimes our idea about how we think something would be, or maybe a connection that we think that we had, like it's true, but the way that it's playing out is not necessarily exactly how we thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
great example.
A lot of my job is holding my clients through that. Okay,
Yes.
here's the initial sparkle. And listen, I always tell them, I'm like, listen, I'm rooting for you that this is it.
Yes,
Okay.
right?
I
Yeah,
I try not to be the negative Nelly when they meet someone that they absolutely adore. I'm like, listen, you and me, it's good for me if he's the one.
that's right.
I get
Yes,
a testimonial,
that's right.
right? My job is done. You tell me I'm awesome.
That's
But my
right.
job is to help you make sure he is the one
That's right.
and to help you have clarity if he isn't,
Yes.
so that we can actually find the one who is really the one.
That's right. Yeah, because like your time is precious and giving yourself to someone because like even I love that you even brought up like the friendship example because becoming friend and it's so interesting too because gaining friends as an adult and especially after an adult after 40, it's like a different game.
It is
It
so
is
hard.
so interesting. Like what is that? But aside from that was a tangent. But yeah, it's like I love that you're helping women like identify what it is that they truly want, but then having the courage to step out or step to the side and like you say, friend zone them if needed, and move on to giving their time and their energy to, finding something that really is like something more nourishing, using your word,
Yes. Yeah.
right? Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you. So I had this thought recently, and I considered doing a podcast episode about it, but maybe we can just do a mini podcast episode about it right now.
Let's
So
do it.
I can't remember what happened. Actually, I can't remember what led up to the thought, but my thought was, I think people who are single should really be reading marriage books,
Mm.
because reading
Mhm.
about the conflicts in marriage and the problems in marriage and what you're going to need to tackle can really be
Yeah,
helpful in informing how you choose.
that's so true.
And people who are married
Mhm.
should be reading dating books
Mm.
to reconsider whether they're in a rut,
You're
whether
so
they've
onto
lost their
something.
spark, and the work that they need to do to, like, okay, let's go on date nights. Let's bring
Yes.
in the sizzle, the sparkle. Who were we
Yes.
when we met? And I was like, oh, I wonder what the thoughts around that could be. It's like swapping our bookshelves as
Yes.
single people and married people. So like, what do you think about, because I know you work with people who are married.
Yeah.
What are the things that like people who are dating need to know about marriage?
Oh my gosh. First of all, you're onto something there. I love that idea. And I think that'd be something even interesting for you to start working with your clients on and just like see what happens. And maybe I'll do the same because even those couple of descriptors that you shared are so on point because typically when we're married, at some point, we definitely do we forget to date each other. right? And we
Mhm.
forget to, make time for one another and like bring that spark back sometimes. And you're so right about those on who are on the single side. They should start looking at what are some of the like the components of like a strong marriage. And I like to think that a strong marriage, at the foundation of it, to me, and of course, because this is my focus, is really strong communication. It can include disagreements, right? Because that's totally healthy, right? Just as long as we're agreeing on how to disagree. But communication is at the foundation of a strong marriage, because when you can communicate about anything, that covers everything, right? It covers the
Yes.
kids, it covers the finances, the in-laws, everything that you can think of, you have to communicate about. And so I think for those who are single, if you like many of the ladies listening who are in that dating phase, it makes me think of some of the possible red flags would be someone who has a hard time communicating, or maybe they're not as emotionally intelligent. And look,
Mm,
that I know that's a personal preference, like having someone kind of more connected to their emotions, and they know how to communicate, or they know how to
mhm.
hold space for you. And so I think sometimes, well, I won't, I feel very strongly that we attract a soul that is meant to be with us in this season of life, so that way we can like experience the lessons that we need to learn,
Mhm.
right? I really
Yeah.
do believe that.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I your question made me think back to, yeah, during that dating phase, to look out for those red flags, and communication, I think, is on top of the list.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
sometimes, like, I even talked to a client recently, and I said, I don't know if this is the right relationship for you because this communication is
Mm,
so hard.
mm, yeah.
Like, you're not married yet, and communication is so hard.
Yep,
Um,
not a good sign.
because I'm having to like even start saying, hey, maybe y'all should go to therapy together. I'm like, but we're
Yeah,
dating. Like, if you
because that's true, right? Yeah, you're just dating and you need to go to therapy? Like, yeah, you know?
and so things like that, like communication, if the communication is so hard, if it's pulling teeth
Yeah,
to get this person to tell you what's on their mind, or for them to be transparent, that may be an indicator that something's wrong, that you should take
exactly.
a step back and take a second look at the relationship, and take
Yeah,
a second look at the possibilities. I like, is this
exactly.
what I really, really want?
Yes, no, that's so true. And hopefully you don't mind me sharing this, but one of the reasons why I love working with you and your husband so much, you both communicate. Like it's I don't we don't get on those calls and someone's like, like you said, like pulling teeth. It's
Yeah.
like that's not something that we're dealing with. And it's because of that, like why you guys are and will continue to grow in like your success and reaching your goals, your communication goals in your marriage. But you're right. Yeah. If you have someone and you are dating and you are seeing some of these red flags, like it's better to have an over communicator, but maybe we need to finesse it a little bit, or maybe teach them how to, take turns or that type of thing. It's better to
Yes.
have that than, like you said, you can't get anything out of them. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
amazing. Wow,
Yeah.
thank you so much. This has been such a delightful episode. So,
It has.
listeners, Christal and I, myself, Christal and Kent are meeting tonight. So Tuesday nights
Yes.
are our marriage coaching night. So I get to experience her
Uh, I'm so excited.
twice today. So this has been such a pleasure. Is there
Thank
anything
you.
else you want to share with the audience? Something you want to share with the ladies, or just whatever it is,
Yeah.
thoughts for us to wrap up?
Yeah. I just, first off, Shadi, this has been like a lovely conversation. And again, I'm so happy that you are serving women on this platform, because this is a season in like your life, right? As you are dating, that this really is a time, because I'm going to say it again, it's a time to be selfish. Right.
Mm,
We've all had our round one, right? Everybody who's listening, Sade, myself, we've all had our round one. And so as you go into dating again, and if especially if marriage is your intent eventually, you be courageous and you be willing to say no in a very, respectful and beautiful way. And you allow yourself to be okay in the discomfort, because the discomfort is not a sign that you've done something wrong. It just means you're a human with a human brain and you're experiencing some emotion. So you say no if you need to. You friend zone, like Sade is teaching you, if you need to, right? And you go after what like your heart truly desires, because it's out there.
It is. It really is. Christal,
Yeah.
thank you so much for sharing.
Thank
I
you.
know for sure, because I have actually been like, I've been dropping your name like with lots of couples since we
Oh,
started working together. So I know there are
I
some people
love that.
listening who
Yeah.
either would love to connect with you or who would love to refer someone to you. Could you
Yeah.
please tell the audience again, just kind of give us a little recap of who you work with, what you do, and
Sure.
where we can find you on the internet?
Yes, thank you. So I primarily work with professional women, but I want you to know, if your husband is willing, bring it on, right? I will absolutely work with couples. It's something I've been learning to really enjoy. And the best place to find me, you're welcome to go to my website. It's christalallen.com. And I know that'll be in the show notes of the show. But I'm also on Instagram if you like to be on social, at Marriage Coach Christal.
Amazing. All right, listeners, I hope you have enjoyed this conversation as much as I have. It's been so delightful. I encourage you to check out Christal's work. I can't think of anyone single
Yeah.
or
Right.
in a
Yeah.
relationship who does not need to hear just this kind of wisdom and this kind of understanding around marriage and around communication and around taking your own path in
Yeah.
your own relationship. So I encourage you to check out her work. We want to thank you for your time and attention, and we will see you next time.